The psychedelic revolution is here. If you want to integrate your visionary experiences into your purpose, get clear on your entrepreneurial path, and help people while you do what you love, then this podcast is for you. Welcome to The Psychedelic Entrepreneur, Medicine for These Times. I'm your host, Beth Weinstein. I'm a spiritual business coach, 3-time entrepreneur, and a lifelong student of psychedelics and sacred plant medicines. You carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times. This podcast will help you to share your medicine so you can create transformation in the world. Listen in on conversations with psychedelic leaders, changemakers, and conscious entrepreneurs who are living proof that a better world is possible when you follow your heart and live in alignment with your soul. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Psychedelic Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Beth Weinstein, and today we have Lauren Taus, our special guest, joining us. Hey Lauren, thanks for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Beth.
So if you don't know about Lauren, she is a psychotherapist with a specialty in psychedelic assisted therapies. And as a clinician, Laura integrates alternative modalities of treatment into her work. She focuses on embodied techniques to support integrative health in mind, body, heart, and spirit. Lauren has decades of experience as a yoga teacher and trainer that translate into therapies that support connection and kind relationship within the body. She studied with David Emerson under the supervision of Bessel at the Trauma Institute in Boston in trauma-sensitive yoga. And she's trained by MAPS for MDMA Assisted Psychotherapy for complex PTSD. Lauren also trained with Dr. Phil Wolfson in Ketamine Assisted Psychotherapy. And she supports psychedelic assisted therapy research with the intention to bring these types of interventions back into the Western mainstream model. Lauren believes that individual and collective healing are intimately intertwined. She's an activist and an advocate for a safer, more integrated world. Lauren is passionate about engaging with individuals and groups to create systematic healing and homecoming to the goodness that exists in all beings. I'm about to cry just reading that. It's so amazing. Because this is so much in my belief and my path as well, but just a totally different direction. But Lauren, the question I would love to hear from you about is what brought you onto your path? You know, to go from yoga into all this trauma work into psychedelic assisted therapies, and you're really seen as a leader in this space. What was your path that brought you to this point? You know, your life story.
It all makes sense in retrospect. If you had asked me even 10 years ago if I would be doing this work, I wouldn't have been able to conceptualize it. And when I consider all of the things that have brought me here, every part of it is in perfect weave. And, I was a precocious kid. I was always scared of death. I didn't have a sense of God or the divine as a little one. And that pushed me into deeper inquiry around what exists beyond this 3D dimension, this egoic identity construction. And I studied religion as an undergrad. I wanted to study economics. I was like, that would make sense, but that wasn't my path. And I also, on a human level, was struggling with control. My sister died from cystic fibrosis when I was 20. And the prognosis with someone with cystic fibrosis is a short life. And so my parents were very concerned about my sister. And I was a straight A student, always high performing, always high achieving. And I developed an eating disorder, which was a mechanism of control and, starving my feelings, starving what I couldn't manage. And that led me into therapy. That led me onto a yoga mat eventually, or at least brought me to a place where the yoga mat needed to be a part of my life for a long, long time. And, my journey home to my body, my journey into a healthy, nourished form brought me, into the seat of client as in therapy, brought me to learning and studying yoga. And then as I continued in my healing journey, psychedelics came into the picture. And the level of healing and holding that was opened through these ceremonies and experiences just accelerated my purpose, my vision, my experience of life. Like I became alive. I gave birth to myself in a way. Mm-hmm. And so when I became present to, and those are important words, the ways in which psychedelic medicine weaves with traditional psychotherapy, I was like, oh, that's my path. That's my purpose. And then I went, deep dive into all kinds of research and study and continued personal development and exploration. But what brought me onto this path is my path and my story.
Yeah. Wow. It's amazing. You said a lot of gems that I completely resonate with too, is like pretty much spending your whole life on this path of, trauma and of course control and the ego and the grasping and it's like the human condition. But I'm curious, were you already really deep and entrenched in the yoga path before the psychedelics came in, or did the psychedelics come before the yoga?
The yoga came before the psychedelics for me. And I was 18 when I went to my first yoga class. I was starving and miserable. And gosh, that was 21 years ago now. I don't know how time goes so quickly. I'm trying to slow it down over here. But I remember that first class and feeling connected to my breath, feeling connected to something bigger than myself, which is the birthplace of spirituality. I remember feeling my body as a foreign country and as a place like I was so excited to explore. So the yoga then, immediately became my spiritual practice. It became my home, and it still is. My hair is wet from a hot yoga class at 6:30 this morning, and while it's still foundational for me, a lot of my journey now is learning how to color outside the lines. And yoga is very prescriptive, very geometric, very formulaic. I want to free my ribs and my hips into like their own kind of free form movement, which psychedelics also help with. But to the point of the question, yoga first, medicine second.
And then can you tell a little bit about how the medicine came into your life? Like, was this kind of just you were looking for it, or you got invited to a random ceremony? And which was your first kind of experience, and what opened up, because of course this is just the interest of like how this becomes your life path.
Yeah, I had just gotten back from a trip to Israel, and I've since done quite a lot of, or at least efforted to be involved in bridge building work in the Middle East. I have very much felt my body as a holy land that's been a war zone in many ways, and where there's many different perspectives and many different kind of conflicting communities within my own ecosystem. And when I arrived home from that trip, my brother was planning to go sit in ceremony with Armand's medicine. Some people may know him. He's quite a drug formulator. It's like a salad of sorts. You take a series of different kind of medicines that open the heart and also kind of open psychedelic experiencings with a mushroom ayahuasca chocolate, but the anchoring of like sassafras or a compound like that, plant like that. And my brother had been involved in this kind of work before me, and he was going and he shared about it with me, and I was very scared. And at the time also I had just gotten back from Israel, and I'm thinking to myself, I had too much hummus and too much pita, and I should be managing my waistline and not like exploring spirituality or letting go of control in any way. But I followed my brother around like a dog that day, just like followed him around and followed him around and followed him around and followed him to the ceremony. And I had a lot of biblical visions in that journey. I connected with a Moroccan French-Israeli man who really opened my mind to wider landscapes in Israel and to other kind of perspectives, which at the time, which is a long time ago, I didn't know about. And so it was eye-opening. It was deeply spiritual, and a doorway that I opened and knew I'd continue to walk through.
Wow. And being someone, because I know I've struggled with this my whole life, much like a lot of us, but being someone who was kind of that like always did things right and by the book and straight A's and control. I definitely wasn't always by the book, but I definitely had that control aspect. Was there ever a part of you that got really freaked out by what was actually happening to you and been like, oh my God, I'm never doing this again? Or was this just like, wow, there's so much potential for healing here?
Mostly, wow, there's so much potential for healing here. I mean, there have been times in journeys where like, oh God, why did I just do this? This is what was this all about? When is it going to stop? Like, the control piece there. But I'm pretty, I would say I'm very comfortable in these spaces, and they feel very much like home to me. I've become friends with death. I've become friends with like surrender, and it's, in many ways, I imagine like the space of psychedelic medicine as like the way in which babies and small children experience the world, where the boundaries between you and me are much less delineated, where sensation and emotion is so much bigger, and it's a lot. And it's beautiful. I love it so much, but it's also big work and needs to be stewarded well and with a lot of care.
Yeah. Well, this brings me to my next question. Then I'm curious about where in this point after that first experience did you go into, like the training and making this part of your practice and shifting out of yoga and into therapy? Which I know you're still doing yoga and therapy, but where was that turning point, and what kind of light bulb moment was there around like, wait, I want to get involved in psychedelics as like my work?
When I became present to the weaving, and again, I said that earlier, when I became present to it, there's absolutely nothing new about psychedelic medicine. And I consider myself a bridge in many ways because I'm deep in plant communities, in circles that sit with ayahuasca or wachuma or psilocybin, and who may carry some judgment around the compounds that I'm trained to work with. Which is part of the reason why I love the work of Carl Hart, for example, who's inviting us to very much think differently about drugs and people that use them, right? This is ancient practice, and it's been modernized and applied in new settings with different kind of tools, but there's nothing new about consciousness exploration. And people need to be reminded of that, right? One of my biggest missions is to provide education for the uninitiated, for people who are walking around with stigma and fear. And I get it, but like, let's talk about it. Let's take a 500 foot back approach. When I learned that I could do this in a integrated way, I was ready to do it. And so about 3 years ago, I did the MAPS MDMA training. And then shortly after, I did the ketamine training with Dr. Wolfson. And, ketamine was a tool that I had a lot of judgment around. And, ketamine, it can very much be used and abused and has a shadow side. But so does anything and everything. Right? Like it's the how that matters. And, I also have come to appreciate that if someone is involved in some sort of addictive process or seeking departure because their life circumstances feel unmanageable and intolerable, compassion.
Agree.
So it was probably like 4 years after I started kind of my own explorations that I started kind of jumping into a world in which I could do it all.
No, I'm glad you brought this up. It's beautiful because, of course, I'm curious about all consciousness expansion, including non-psychedelic, right? Like I have been saying constantly how flower essences are some of the most powerful things I've been working with for years. And those are just pure energy, right? But yeah, there is this thing, here I am with the Shipibo tapestry behind me. My path has been more definitely guided by the plants, but I started with synthetics, and I was in my 20s doing K recreationally back when that was a thing. And it is interesting to now be interviewing, people like you who are using this to treat PTSD. And, I've seen someone speak from the VA about how she's never seen such progression in our veterans, in PTSD from people who've been in war. And there's so much healing potential that, yes, now there is this discussion around like, well, compassion for all, whatever works. Like even, and even the prescription drugs that most medicine people are very much against, which of course, I don't want those for myself, but I'm very much about like, look, whatever works, like at this point in human history where there's just so much trauma and there's so much collective strife and, uncertainty in the world, there's a lot going on, and I don't believe anybody needs to suffer. I do believe there's better ways, which is why we have this podcast and why we're talking about it. Now, I'm also curious about this, you mentioned the word integrated, which is one of my favorite discussions because it's a huge part of what I do with my own clients. My own clients are people who are called to be coaches and healers to also bring in psychedelics into their work, whether it's integration work or somatics or, microdosing, not so much like therapists or facilitators, although I do have some of those clients as well, but really about all the other pieces. And I'm curious because you came from such an embodied path of, yoga, breath, awareness, presence, and then we're brought to psychedelics, how did that inform the discussions you now have? Like your podcast is called The Embodied Life. This is the name of your website. You talk about integrated. And we all know that this has been quite a missing piece in the discussion for many people. And I believe this is one of the big answers. But yeah, what are your takes on this idea of integration and embodiment, and what is it all about, and how do you work with it with your own clients?
Good question.
It's a lot, I know, but
I have a teacher, Brianna Cavion, who likes to say that spirituality is a path of descension, not ascension. It's a path of embodying our body, being here in this experience. This wild life that is unfolding right now is a miracle and a gift. And to open our eyes and our hearts and the field of sensation to what's here now is such a gift. And it's not easy to do that. And our conditioning has us shut down our imagination. Our conditioning has us shaming and cutting off from so much of our own magic. And so the real progress is return. The hero's journey is a homecoming, always. And, traditional psychotherapy, which, I am a psychotherapist and I have a therapist and I do regular therapy, has a tendency to be overly cerebral and hypercognitive. And you cannot think a feeling. You can't. A feeling is in the body. It's energy in motion, emotion. The shortcut to any painful circumstance is to go through it. There's no getting over it or around it. It's like you got to go through it. We mitigate our suffering by opening to our pain. Now, the way that I work in my practice is also the way that I work with myself. And, I'm my first I'm only ever as good as I am. So nothing motivates me more than my clients and my mission in my own personal life. And, a dear friend of mine, colleague in the space, Adele LaFrance, says, I heal myself to heal others. I heal others to heal myself. It's a back and forth. Now, we've all inherited systems from our ancestors, from our environments, from our experiences. And that programming needs shifting and shedding and reverence too, right? It's so it's not good, bad, whatever. It's just, let's acknowledge that it's there. And in order to create a more durable shift in a good direction towards more aliveness, towards more presence, towards more embodiment, there's aspects that need to be interrupted. So the process of inviting therapy, and as almost like therapy is integration. Yoga is integration. I mean, lifestyle should be integration focused. And life is psychedelic. All the time, we're bombarded with like wild information. What do we do with that? Like, what do we do when we break up? What do we do when someone dies? What do we do when we lose a job? What do we do when we get a new job? What do we do when we get more money? Like, what do we do when we're in love? Like, how do we integrate these different experiences? You know, I think that there can often be like codependent relationships with medicine. Medicine is consciousness medicine. These are allies and partners, not magic bullets, not the solution. And for me, I welcome the intentional use of recreational medicine to create more connection, to create more play, to optimize, to like inspire for creativity. But when we're working with these tools, they should translate when optimal cases into more presence in the 3D, more life here now in this dimension. And integration is like any number of things that get you here more, right? Like people are constantly leaving, constantly escaping, phone, work, sex, shopping, smoking, cigarettes, like endless like escape. And again, passion for the departure, like I do it sometimes too, probably daily, you know, like it's a lot to be here, but what a beautiful place it is. So the integration piece for me is everything. And when you look at indigenous contexts where people are sitting with ayahuasca, like if someone is struggling after a ceremony, they will walk down the road and knock on their shaman's door and have a chat. Like that's not the world that we live in. So when someone's working with medicine, like they need support in the aftermath. And to not have that support, I believe is almost cruel. I'm not a shaman, but my job is to sit there and provide support. And to validate the experience, whatever it is, maybe mystical, maybe connecting with like ancestors, maybe, you know, something that might present as bizarre to someone who has no context for these things, right? To validate, to support the anchoring and how this can support like a better lived life. And like, and then the body, it's just, the body's part of it. Like you can't, it's in and through the body that we heal.
I love this. I'm like, yes, so many gems here. Cause I'm constantly saying, you know, and I'm a business coach. This came to me, I was already business coaching, but this came to me through this, through my own path, my own journey, but also working with a lot of clients who are already on this medicine path. And the missing piece for me was like, wait a second, there's no integration into your work, your day-to-day, what you do for a living, what you're doing in your business, how are you showing up in life? And that's when I was like, wait, this integration is every single living moment. It's not just go talk to someone twice after the ceremony. It's literally, it's the everyday, it's the every moment. And the psychedelic piece is just a piece. And like you said, it's interesting. I'm like you. I'm like, I go to therapy, I coach, I do healing. And even the other day, and I go to only somatic therapy, like that's all I've been doing for years now. And even the other day, my therapist was like, do you just notice how you told a story to escape the actual feeling? And I was like, wow. And there I am in therapy, like feeling all the feels, because she also works with medicine as well. But there it was, like this such a small minor escape. And I was like, my God, the human mind, it's like we do it so much. And yeah, as a society, I do believe this conversation we're having right now about the body and this integration and the everyday and the aliveness of feeling it all and allowing it all in is a huge conversation. And thankfully, more and more people are getting it and talking about it. But it's been interesting, and I'm curious what your take is on this. As psychedelics grow and become more popular and the Michael Pollans of the world keep publishing books and it goes very, very mainstream, there is kind of this, I keep calling it the Amazon.com, Amazon Prime effect, where people just want everything now. And there is kind of this like, okay, wait, maybe it's the psychedelic that'll just cure everything in an instant. And it's interesting because we all know that's, unfortunately, it's not the truth. And yes, they do help expedite the healing with the proper, like you said, like sitting with Lauren, and discussing this or going into the body and feeling the full what comes through out of a ceremony. But I'm curious, how do you believe that the psychedelics and, psychedelic therapy, let's say with ketamine or MDMA or even, non-therapeutic settings, how do they help us in this process of integration and rooting down into the opposite of ascension that everybody keeps talking about, where it really is, it's about coming into the body. But how do you feel that the psychedelics play a part in this process?
As we change legislation around drugs, and as the gold rush into businesses connected to psychedelic medicine expands, there will be abuse, there will be mistakes, there will be learning. It's part and parcel for the course. The question of widening access is very dear to me, and a question that I don't have the answer to at all. Anything that looks like the McDonald's of psychedelics scares me. This is really, really explosive, big work, and it can be harmful, and it's not for everybody. And I believe that healing happens in relationship. Most importantly, the relationship a person has with him or herself. As a clinician, my job as a therapist is to offer a practice field for how to do that well. The word love in my field has been bastardized, and I love my clients deeply and boundaried, and they know that, and it's big medicine. Big medicine. I think that's my greatest asset as a provider. It's the way that I love them and listen and care, and they know that they're cared for and that their lives matter and that the details are important and that they're seen and heard. And, I also begin all of my sessions. If clients are open to it, I begin all of my sessions with a U-turn, with a closed eye process, outside, inside, doing, being. Let's come here. Welcome home. All parts are welcome. All parts are invited. All parts are wanted. And I invite people to check in at the level of the body. I invite people to check in at the level of the heart. I invite people to check in at the level of the mind, quality and speed of mind, what's going on, before we just dive in, right? And I like to say that I need to know like who's who in your zoo, where you're looking to go and grow before we start working or thinking about medicine. I want my clients to feel safe and to trust when they're going to let go at that level. I do tend to work in higher doses. It's not like required to work in higher doses, but I work at psychedelic doses most of the time. And so that's a big, big surrender. And people are scared of doing that. And I validate the fear. I have fear. Every psychedelic experience I have, I'm a little scared. And that's called reverence and respect. And if I didn't have it, that would be weird for me. But my clients, like, I need to green light it when we're working with medicine, and they need to green light it. And that's going to take time. It doesn't need to take a ton of time, but like I need to build relationship and rapport before we go into inner outer space. And for me, like I'm a specific steward in that way. I'm careful about how I work, and I think that that's really important. And then building like person to person, like there's no one size fits all treatment plan. Tools for how to be with themselves in the world and how to be with others in the world, right? Like, and they're obvious, and there's no like. We want to invite devotion, but also like flexibility and like and love. Like it's okay if it's not perfect. It's not supposed to be. Whether that's meditation, prayer, nature, dance, singing, playing. People don't play enough. We don't have enough fun. Like the business of life is so serious. Like let's have fun together. But I do have concerns as the field widens. There will be, like I said, fallout, and it's part and parcel for the learning. But I believe that this work needs to be relational and careful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have asked some people about that, about this growing, there's everybody throwing money into it, and now ketamine centers popping up. And I have actually never done ketamine like actual assisted therapy. I've only done it recreationally, but I have heard some stories about, okay, doctors just giving it and sending people on their way. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know that was the thing. Like, is that even doing anything if you don't have the therapeutic process involved? Because then that's where I kind of wonder, is this just another pill versus the like you said, like healing in relation, like going into the body, the actual deep inner exploration process in conjunction with the medicine. And I know, like, I very much agree with you. There's going to be a lot of mistakes. There's going to be the Wild West. We're going to see everything, like everything else in the world. But, I'm curious what your thoughts are on, the growing popularity of like everyone. And when I say everyone who's like interested in psychedelics wanting to get involved in this. Like I've even had clients who we're kind of curious. Then all of a sudden one day it's like, I'm actually going to start facilitating. And I'm like, well, I'm not one to say who is supposed to and who doesn't, and like, that's not my job. But I'm curious what your feeling is on this and like what it's, and I know you have a new initiative that is probably helping this out, right? Because there is, like you mentioned, lack of accessibility is part of the issue is there's not enough training programs. There's not enough actual therapists for the amount of demand there is for the therapy. And then when we throw in the price points, then, not everybody's being served. So, yeah, what's your take on the direction that this may go in and how you want to start bringing your work to help shape it?
This is like an all hands on deck type operation. And when I say this, I mean this human experience. And we're in a mental health pandemic of unprecedented proportions. And people, in my practice, I have people who have everything and are not happy and are lack purpose and inner peace. And then you consider those who don't have access to resources or education or meals, right? Like the world is suffering. And I believe that we can do better. And I also firmly believe that mental health is the biggest problem on the planet, bar none. Every other problem is connected to it. Every single other problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know how to do this in a scaled way. I don't know. I don't think robots can replace humans. I don't think that this stuff should be done alone. I don't. I really don't. I feel very strongly about that. And people, we need more trained people. We need more education, which is, what I'm leaning into right now. I have a very full private practice. I'm looking to expand and hiring other people to work with me. And what I want also is for people to have the information. I want science over stigma coupled with intimate stories of like how this actually works, right? Like your audience and my audience are already converted. What about like the people who are, converted and their parents or grandparents, right? I converted my father to psychedelics at 75. And the level of like growth and expansion and spirituality that's coming into his life is beautiful. Like it's never too late. People deserve to have good lives and information about tools that could potentially unlock more durable healing. So I'm looking to provide that with my latest initiative, the Psychedelic Coalition for Health. That's, we're coming forward, my my partner and I, with a public virtual symposium that features some of the, pioneering researchers and leaders in the space for the last several decades. This is like very real research, information, education. Nick and I will also like hang around and provide breakout rooms, networking, further information, conversation, integration with music and community. And then we're also launching a training for clinicians to learn about working with altered states of consciousness And in many ways, this training is what I wish I had. And we are offering master classes on different plants and compounds. We are educating on 3 primary intervention techniques within the space of altered states. That's internal family systems work, somatics, and transpersonal psychology. And then we have a more textured conversation around ketamine as the only kosher tool at the current time. And that conversation is collaborative and inclusive. There are 3 lead teachers from 3 different schools that are, providing trainings already. That's Phil Wolfson from the Ketamine Training Center, Veronica Gold from Polaris, Scott Shannon from Prati, who are all teaching in our training. And, Steve Mandel from Los Angeles Ketamine Clinics, who works with an IV model. Like, it's a very nuanced, textured conversation. And we want people to learn. And it is the wild, wild west. There aren't any universally adopted protocols, nor do I know that even think that there should be. Like, I don't know. This is very much bespoke work. Like, each individual conscious needs its own things. And like I said, I don't want McDonald's for psychedelics. I don't want McDonald's, period. But like, certainly not with consciousness when we're working with eons of material that's specific to each individual.
Yeah, no, and I agree. Now, thank you so much for sharing. I would love to hear more about this training, because this has come up a lot. So I have a lot of clients who've gone through certain like integration training programs or internal family systems or different somatic experiencing, which is great. But it's interesting, the clients, which are actually the majority of my clients that are non-therapists, non-trained in medicine. I do have some clients that are like nurses, nurse practitioners, from the Western model of healthcare, trying to shift into, alternative healing with some psychedelics mixed in. But, you mentioned your trainings for clinicians. This is the one thing I'm curious about is, what about, because there's a lot of, like, for example, the therapist I work with is technically not a, LCSW or psychotherapist, but she's taken, 15 different somatic trainings and internal family systems and Hakomi and, NLP, and I could go on and on, right? It's like all the things, except she's not an actual like board certified, like the system of the state therapist. So what does someone do in that case? Because even my ex-partner, who is very close to me, he's also a somatic therapist who's been at it for a very long time, but is not officially like board certified by the state and doesn't have like a board license because he's of a different kind of somatic therapy. So how does a training like this work for people that are qualified but not able to get into, let's say, the MAPS training or the CIS training or the other trainings that are out there? How does that work?
Well, it's a question that Nick and I have talked about, and there are people that we know of, like the ones that you've named, who are totally appropriate, like epic candidates for this kind of experience and training. And we've talked about it, and we're still talking about it. We're not like totally decisive. On some level, we're efforting to operate within the systems that exist here and to create like legally clinical opportunities for people to get treatment where there are certain like boundaries and parameters, such as licensures. And as a clinically licensed person, I sat for state boards in New York and in California, which are 2 of the strictest states and the most gnarly kind of processes. Like, I don't think that my license, it doesn't make me better than somebody else. I think that there's people who are incredibly well equipped and are doing big work, and they're doing it on the ground, right? They can't, I say ground versus underground. I like ground versus, but this, it's the groundwork. I'm above ground. Like, I'm able to do this above ground. And, as legislation changes, I hope that lots of things change. And this is an important question that I don't fully have the answer to, but where I see that there are many people who are being excluded who should be included because they're well prepared and skilled and can do this work well.
Yeah, yeah. And I agree. I mean, it's kind of this weird line. Even I go through this as a business coach. It's like, who am I willing to work with? Where are my boundaries? I never go tell anybody to just, go do it illegally and like have fun. No, like I take this very seriously, but at the same time, it's like, this is what I've seen. Even the work I do, which I am the furthest from facilitating anything. Like I don't even dabble in that. I get random people off the internet constantly asking me for help, and like, where can I find someone? I need help. I have tried everything. And it's a sad situation that we're in where it's, there is a lot of this underground work. We all know it's readily available, and there's only so much we can operate in with the limitations we have. And this is where it's been interesting because there's so much, there's so many people out there who want to make this into their career, like weave it into their other healing modalities or their other transformational, interpersonal, spiritual work. But then what, and that's where it's like, well, how do you do this the right way? And I've actually a lot of the interviews on this podcast have addressed this because there is so much interest with, I just want to help people. People want to give back. I don't know, mushrooms cured them. So then they like eating disorder. Mushrooms cure my eating disorder. I want to help women with their eating disorder. I'm trained in these 10 things, but I don't have any official license, So it's an interesting world, and we'll see. And I'm glad you're doing this training. I would actually like to hear a little more about it. But because, regardless if it's, clinicians or not, there is still a need, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I can't even tell you how many people I've met that haven't been able to get into the few programs there are. It's like once a week I hear of someone who's like, well, I didn't get in. Can you talk a little bit more about what this training is, when it's starting, how, like the details, or is this like still very early stage?
No, I can talk about it. So first of all, education is available. Like, please, people, come join us at the symposium. Like, connect with other like-minded humans that are in the space that are eager to learn. Like, I mean, the symposium is anchored by people like Gabor Mate, Rick Doblin, Dick Schwartz, Paul Stamets, Rachel Yehuda, Camille Barton, Natalie Ginsburg, Izzy from MAPS. I mean, it's a star-studded cast. Tim Ferriss. It's a very powerful, heart-centered initiative, and it's a place to learn and grow and connect. And for those who do have and that's, by the way, August 28th, September 11th, and September 25th. So that's in the fall. psychedeliccoalition.com. Join us there. The training is 2 weekends in October, and currently, we might shift. You can feel free to reach out to me. Currently, it's 2 weekends, the 7th to the 11th in October, and then the 21st to the 25th in October, that we'll be meeting at one commune in Topanga, which is a beautiful property in the woods. And, nature is big, big, big medicine. So to be able to gather there and to stay there and to eat, beautiful, healthy foods there, and to learn and move and stretch and be together there is very important. In many ways, the training is, excuse me, is anchored in an ethos of slow and present. And, we do have experiential portions integrated into the training with ketamine. Each clinician participant will have one experience each weekend. And in other trainings, oftentimes people will have 2 experiences in 5 days and also sit with the experiences of others. And it's wildly enrolling to hear the diversity of what presents, especially on a medicine like ketamine that's kind of confusing to someone who may have seen it used in other places and spaces. But we really want to give our cohort the opportunity to practice the skills of being a psychedelic therapist, being the guide, and facilitator, being the thing. Facilitate is to make easy. That's what it means, right? I think when people come to psychedelics or therapy, it's because something inside of them needs to die. So I'm facilitating that death. And if we really appreciated our own mortality, which psychedelics can be confrontive in that way, in a good way, But if we really, really, really like understood we're here for a temporary, finite period of time, whoa, would the leaves look brighter and the birds like sound sweeter and the sun like kiss on the shoulder more tender. Like life is precious and it's now. It's now. So the training is designed to bring you into the now. It's designed to support in the way that we're teaching more sustained practice, right? Like we want our cohort to be in practice of self-care. We're going to stretch and dance and like be in practice of the offerings that we're learning. And the idea as well is to really create more community. Like I'm in private practice and my co-founder, Nick, at the Psychedelic Coalition for Health, like he and I are powwow a lot. I also powwow with Hope Psychiatry. We have weekly calls, but by and large, independent private practitioners are on their own. And the level of isolation in work that really needs to be supported, even from the vantage point of the provider, is astounding. So I'm looking to create community and connection. We called it the Psychedelic Coalition for Health, shorthand PCH. Like Los Angeles doesn't have anything. Like we want to create community in California, on the ground in Los Angeles. Now, the training is open to other people from other spaces and places. And we're also really, really advocating for grassroots connection, like clinicians being in conversation with each other, referring to one another, knowing who's good at what, like being in your strike zone and in a way that's like allows for each provider to be doing what they love and for everybody who comes to a person to get what they need from the right person, right? Like there's only a handful of people I even know to refer to. And oftentimes people are asking me like, do you have referrals here or there? And like, I kind of know where to plug in networks to get the questions answered. But these should be easier questions to answer. And that's also part of what I'm seeking to create and offer.
That sounds so beautiful. And I could see this. I mean, this model to me is needed everywhere. Because, this is, especially since COVID, right? It's like, I mean, I've worked from home and worked remotely for years, but even though we are kind of coming back, there is still that feeling of like, we've been isolated for so long and now a lot of people are working remotely and there is kind of that, collective, people are moving around, people are working all over the place. And it's like, how do we bring community together? And even, like you said, referrals. Like, again, I'm actually building a resource list right now for my website to refer people to because I get so many inquiries looking for this and that and this and that. And I'm like, I don't have that many, I know they're out there. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you other than Google a lot. But, and I don't believe anybody should have to dig and dig and dig. So I'm like, well, let me try to put together what I know. And then maybe, like other people and I can keep adding. And this is that interconnected because yes, the whole belief is how do we serve at the highest and best? Like I will be always straight up with someone and say like, that's not what I do. Let me send you to a friend of mine who does a different kind of coaching or, you need this in addition or, go heal this first, or whatever it is. So I love the idea of this. And so what else is on the forefront for you and your business and the symposium? Like, is this the training and then expanding that? Like, what is going to happen for you in the next year? Give us a preview.
The Psychedelic Coalition for Health is my baby, and I'm so honored and humbled to be partnered with my co-founder, Dr. Nick Bruce. He has so much integrity, so much training, so much heart. He's one of the only internal family systems trained therapists that works with psychedelics. And, he's very, very powerful. And he and I are like a very good team working together. And, he and I are definitely intending to create more trainings like this, to create more like different specific offerings. I have a big wish with the larger kind of build to welcome people into the conversation that know nothing about it. And that's not happening in round one. Round one, we're reaching like, the people that are excited about it, that know about it, that want to learn more. And there's a ton of us. And hopefully some of them will invite their sisters and their partners and their parents and the people that like are like, huh? And raised eyebrows and afraid. But, my mom died 6 years ago of pancreatic cancer. And she had a life of complex PTSD. I think she lived her perfect journey. And I also know with every fiber of my being that she would have lived longer with access to these tools. And I work for the children of parents who are dissociated or drug addicted. I work for the parents who are in too much pain to tolerate their experience and so have to leave on the wings of many different things. I work for the possibility of 75-year-old men growing. I work for the expansion of like our hearts and for the homecoming of each and every one of us. I work for ending the war inside self, ending the war outside of self, ending the war with the planet. And I work, and I'm working to bring in as many people as I can into this conversation, into this work, not necessarily for them to have an experience, but for them to know what this is and to know that like healing is possible, transformation is possible, and to have compassion for the addictions of their own or of their loved ones, to understand that that's simply untreated pain. And I have a lot that's cooking. I have no idea what it's going to look like. There will be retreats. There will be like public educational offerings. There will be probably more podcasts. There will be more educational trainings. But like I am a woman on a mission. I am purpose driven. I am like activated and inspired. And I do believe that this is an all hands on deck kind of operation. Like we're separation is an illusion. Like there's one life living us all. And that is like what I bow my head to, and what I wake up thinking about and go to sleep thinking about, and yoga too, and like honor us all. Like so it will be many, many, many things, and I do hope to like stay in touch, and that maybe the people who've been listening like will join us in our initial offering, the symposium, and stay connected for all that will be birthed and created through this organization channel.
Oh my God, Lauren, this is awesome. Yes, I feel you so much. Like my heart is so mission driven because I do believe this is collective. This isn't about us and our drama and this and that. I mean, we're all in this together. We're all here incarnated for a reason right now. We're here in this kind of crazy, who knows what's going to happen world, but there is potential. And I believe in the goodness of humans and the earth and the planet and the future. So I am so with you on this mission, and we will definitely share your link and the symposium and your work. And I'm very excited about the training program. I actually have a bunch of people I want to send this to.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mike, I already have a list of, I don't know if they're qualified, but we'll see. But yes, thank you so much for this work you're doing in the world. And I agree with you completely. This is the time to just get this message out, so that people can be inspired and really see the potential in all of us for a better planet, in the end, and happiness for all. Thank you so much, Lauren. It was such an honor to have you here. I really appreciate it.
It's so much fun with you, Beth. And I look forward to weaving more and sharing more. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And everybody, be sure to join us next week on another episode. The episodes are released on Tuesday of The Psychedelic Entrepreneur. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you're feeling inspired, I'd appreciate it if you showed your love with a review. And check out my YouTube channel where you can find the video version of this podcast. You can also head to bethaweinstein.com to learn more about me and grab my free business growth trainings. Remember, you carry your own unique medicine, and your medicine is what we need for these times.